Hi, I'm Jim Trinker. You might remember me from a previous video in which I suggested politely that the PS5 version of Baldur's Gate 3 probably won't look as good or run as well as the PC version can at its best. I mean, that's the gist of it. Most of us would call that a press release from the Department of Bleeding f***ing obvious, but a lot of people got mad at me about it. So, alright, fine, fair enough. But look, this is the game running on PS5, and I'm pleased to report it looks great. I've managed to sink about 7 or 8 hours into this version, and it's perfectly decent. The control support is amazing. It doesn't make as much use of the DualSense haptic feedback as I would have liked. It's mostly relegated to sort of UI feedback in menus and things, but, you know, it's nice to see it utilised at all in a game like this. Visually, it looks to me like it's a cross between medium and high settings in terms of the presentation. The level of detail doesn't fall off as close to the camera as the medium preset on PC does, but there's still a lot of kind of low-res textures and stuff like that. So it's a mix. They've clearly spent a lot of time tweaking and optimizing it, which is in itself a bit weird because there's some caveats here that seem incongruous to that, basically in terms of performance. Now, what I predicted in the last video as a summary was that the PS5 would not run at 4K native. There would be some noticeable upscaling going on, probably FSR 2.0, so the presentation probably wouldn't be as sharp as the PC version can be. And I wondered out loud if there would be some performance issues, given that even big high-end PCs can run into performance issues on this game, particularly in Act 3, particularly when there's a lot of NPCs on screen, etc. And despite the protestations of a lot of people in the comments of the last video who insisted that Baldur's Gate 3 was so basic that it would probably run on a hairdryer. I mean, it might look like that to some people, but it's not the case. It can be quite a taxing game even on high-end systems. And we know from that infamous PlayStation blog post that Larian are targeting 60 FPS for this release. Now, what you do get is a performance and a quality mode, and it tells you right there that the game is rendering at 1440p, so it's not native 4K. Even if you pick quality mode, it locks at 30 FPS and renders at 1440p internally. Performance mode lowers the image quality a little bit to target 60 frames a second, and it's a target that it mostly hits, but there is quite a lot of noticeable choppiness in certain areas and certain situations. It's not the completely smooth, pristine presentation that a lot of people were assuming it would be on the basis that Baldur's Gate 3 shouldn't tax a premium bit of kit like the PS5. What people need to remember is that as great as the PS5 is, and it is great, you know, you can buy one for 400 quid. In the grand scheme of things and computing terms, it is cheap and cheerful. So, of course, we would expect compromises to happen on the PS5 version of this game. And they are, the aforementioned image quality stuff. It's not the sharpest image, it's clearly upscaled. There's a lot of shimmering and artifacting around any character that has hair, for example. And yeah, it can't maintain that 60 FPS lock. As soon as there's, you know, more than half a dozen characters in the scene, which happens often because you've got settlements with lots of people in them, lots of vibrant environments, things going on, people having conversations, doing stuff, manning stalls. And this is a game, as we all know by now, that has enormous amounts of environmental interactivity. You're going to see the PS5 dropping a lot of frames. Usually it's noticeable, but not to an extent that it ruins the experience or anything like that. But then you hit an area and you can see dips down to what feels like about 45 FPS, and it's just not great. It feels like walking through molasses. For those of you out there who quite legitimately don't feel a game like this needs 60 FPS particularly, the 30 FPS mode seems fine. I imagine it's a lot easier for the machine to hit that target, although I haven't spent hours playing in 30 FPS mode because I just don't like playing in 30 FPS mode if I can get away with it. And if there is any motion blur here, it's very subtle, so it's the kind of 30 FPS that feels a bit staccato, it feels a bit like stop motion. I know, everyone out there detests motion blur, but it is useful for low frame rate situations like this. That's what it's there for. Don't shout at me. Stop shouting at me in the comments about really innocuous stuff, alright? It's getting tiring. The other thing that's weird is that the PS5 version doesn't seem to support VRR at all, even if you set it to be forced in the PS5 menu. So you'll be subject to that stuttering even if you have a nice telly that's got G-Sync or FreeSync or whatever. And it's honestly a bit of a baffling oversight, especially because it would have been an easy way to mitigate those performance issues for people who have televisions with those features. And honestly, that's a lot of people now because those features aren't even particularly high-end. You can get a G-Sync capable TV for less than $1,000 now. Now, the PS5's implementation of VRR is admittedly dogshit compared to the Xbox, but it's still a baffling omission. But Larian's post-release support is incredible, and I'm sure it'll be patched in sooner rather than later. Now, no doubt the PS5 version of Baldur's Gate 3, as with the PC version, is going to enjoy getting regular updates as time goes on, so I very much doubt how this game performs at launch is the end of the story. Now, we've got the Xbox version on the way, which has to support even lower grade hardware than the PS5, so I think Larian's optimization efforts are just never going to end. So in summary, Baldur's Gate 3 on PS5, it is compromised and it can be a little bit choppy, but it looks really good. It's by no means a bad version of the game, and to be honest, it probably runs a hell of a lot better than most people's shitey PCs do, so it's a great thing. The more people who can experience this wonderful RPG, the better. And what a great time we're living in. If you're like me, you're platform agnostic, you've got all the consoles. If you love grand single-player RPG experiences, we are being treated to an absolute feast right now. 2023 has been like the best year for gaming I can remember since like the 360 days. It's fantastic, and I just despair that so many people are just so constantly mad about things all the time. There's not much to be mad about. Things are great right now. You've got Tears of the Kingdom, you've got Final Fantasy 16, you've got Starfield, you've got Baldur's Gate 3. I mean, that alone, surely that alone is enough for a lifetime. But we've also got Shadow Gambit: The Cursed Crew, which is a wonderful AA game that came out in between the two big RPGs this year. We've got loads of really amazing indie games that are massively full of depth. Like, has anyone played Dave the Diver? Dave the Diver is like one of the best games of 2023. Genuinely one of the best games of 2023. And it's done pretty well. It's had a little bit of buzz, but it's barely been a drop in the ocean because we've got so much other stuff that is also amazing coming from all quarters. AAA, AA, independents. It's just like, we can't even move for the amount of good games that are coming out every fucking week this year. And yet folk are just screaming at each other on social media about fucking Xbox this and Sony Pony that, and just, folk just don't know they're born. Why are folk wasting their time on that sort of shit instead of playing this? If anyone out there feels the need to get on Twitter and whine about Starfield not having proper planets or whatever, just play Baldur's Gate 3 and shut the fuck up. It's right there. You'll have a better time. And look, while I'm being really self-indulgent about this to fill some time, in case you hadn't guessed that's what I was doing, can I just point out that the 17-minute video I made a few weeks ago where I guessed what the PS5 version of Baldur's Gate 3 was going to look like, turns out I was fairly spot on, right? I was spot on. I was right. I was basically right. I was completely right. More or less, right? Don't doubt me ever again, right? Catch yous later.
You there! Hello! Complexum tuum, a terra